President Trump spoke to NBC very briefly and said the situation with the downed pilot doesn't alter negotiations with Iran or the trajectory of this war. What's your take on that?
Well, he's saying what he feels he has to, but we have no evidence as to what's going to happen if the pilot is killed, or the crew member, I should say, if the crew member is held hostage, or if the crew member is rescued. Three very different scenarios that can affect very differently how Iran deals with the United States, and therefore how the United States deals with Iran. Trump has benefited from these reporter calls where he kind of says nothing or sort of delivers the same message he says on Truth Social, and there's not much pushback. And so here he's sort of being given that advantage. But the reality is this, is that the White House yesterday was expecting that it was Good Friday. People were going to be in and out of the office pretty quickly, and they'd be out by mid-morning. And instead, what wound up happening was this. And there was an all-day meetings in the White House, in the Situation Room. President was, and rightfully so, very concerned. And there's a lot of worry. There is some indications that there might be some sort of special operators in the United States on the ground assisting in the search, but that's only an indication. We don't know. Nevertheless, this marks a real major turning point in the way in which this war is discussed for the reasons you just said, namely, while the United States does have a lot of air superiority over the skies of Iran, it doesn't have complete air superiority. And in this case, thinking that the United States did helped lead to this pilot being shot down.
General Kimmitt, we'd love to hear from you on both ends of this search. First, the actual search and rescue operation that's underway right now, whether it includes boots on the ground or the C-130s and helicopters that we saw video of over the weekend, but also what is this pilot going through? These are, of course, very well-trained men and women for an instance like this. Talk to us about the SEER training that they are putting into place now.
Yeah, let's first talk about the SEER training. That's a very, very specialized course given to pilots and, in some cases, other special operations forces. They go through a couple of weeks of this exact type of scenario. You're on the ground. Your plane has crashed, you're possibly injured, you have nothing more than what you're carrying on yourself and some communications. The first and most important thing is to, as they say, learn to live like a bunny. In other words, imagine you're a small, fragile, quiet little bunny. You just don't try to be brave. Try to hide, try to find the right time to contact your rescue team. But first and foremost, get yourself in a place where you can't be found, and don't attract anything other than those aircraft that are coming to save you.
And General, when they eject, they don't eject together. They're on two different parachutes. What is the protocol? Are they supposed to find each other? Does it depend on the situation? I know the big impetus is survive. What do? Do you look for your other guy, or do you run and hide, or does it just depend?
Yeah, it just depends, as you say. I mean, for example, if you've seen the other parachute go down and it's near where you are, you might want to try to link up. But typically, your first focus is on yourself. You don't do anything to expose yourself. You may get over to your buddy to make sure that he or she is not injured, but it's got to be an independent action that the individuals are taking, because more people just bring in more, attract more. Yeah.
Ethan Bronner, we know that Tehran is offering a reward, as Christine mentioned, $66,000 to citizens who capture the pilot alive. To what extent might this American pilot run into friendly people on the ground?
Well, I wish I could really answer that with any authority. Look, I mean, the Mossad has been offering vast rewards in Iran, too, for a long time now, and some of them are getting answered. I don't really know if the $66,000 is going to do it. I think that this is a battle that isn't really fundamentally about money. It is about two cultures at war with each other. And, of course, within Iran, there's a culture war as well. So I don't know. I mean, I think I would say that also in the history of wars, one downed crew member is not a huge tragedy, but it's just for us. We don't really consider this to be a necessary war, most Americans, and therefore everything that happens seems like it's going to knock the thing off over the edge, right?
And also, maybe I don't. What is in southwestern Iran? I mean, it's pretty rural. The provincial governor is one of the people who's called for this bounty. What's out there? Who's out there? And where could the dangers be?
I mean, I don't have any greater granular knowledge than you do of what's in southwestern Iran. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It's just interesting to me because we've seen some of these other pilots. There was another aircraft that went down as well, and the pilot was able to punch out and get to, I think, Kuwait, and so I'm assuming they're close to the water there, but I don't know what the infrastructure is or even where these pilots would be trying to go.
In southwest Iran, it is, right? Yeah.
You know, we've barely talked about the A-10 Warthog because there is not a search and rescue operation underway. But, Mark, this is a pretty big deal, too. We just added a number of these aircraft to the region to help with strafing runs along the strait and be ready for whatever the president might be asking for. Do we have any information on what caused this plane to go down?
No, we don't. One of the things that a lot of people point out, which as the general there can talk about more than I can, is the A-10 Warthog is a very old plane. I mean, my father was in the Vietnam War, and they were in service at that time. And there have been moves by the Air Force periodically to get rid of it, but it's sort of an iconic airplane in part because it flies slow enough and fires so many rounds that it has a lot of advantage. But nevertheless, whether it's mechanical or whether it was brought down by enemy fire, I'm not quite sure. But we shouldn't rule out the mechanical reasons for the reasons stated, that is, that these are very old airplanes.
General, to that point, I was asking some military folks about that yesterday. I was asking, why we're still using the F-15, why we're still using the A-10. Yeah. Maybe you can explain it a little bit, but I was told that the F-15, has almost a perfect airframe. And there was actually an incident where one of the wings was shot off and the plane could still land. Is it because these planes are just workhorses, they're around, and they do get the job done? Why are we still using these, and what are they really good at?
Well, first of all, I think you're referring to the A-10, not to the F-15. The F-15 is a high-performance aircraft, flies high, flies fast, drops precision munitions. The A-10 came into use in the 80s. It's a tank killer, has 30-millimeter gun on it, which has depleted uranium rounds on it, and it was built to stop the Soviet assault into Western Europe. It is essentially a plane built around a gun, and as you said, it is so sturdy you can blow a wing off and still land it. Very slow, very vulnerable, but the pilot actually sits in a titanium bathtub because he is expecting, or she is expecting, to get hit by ground fire. That
30-millimeter gun is about the size of a Volkswagen Bug inside the front of that airplane. It's pretty remarkable. Ethan, I'd like to ask you about Iran's offensive capabilities beyond what we saw in the shooting down of this airplane. Iran is launching about 20 missiles a day at Israel, firing 1 or 2 at a time. How long can it continue this cadence?
Right. This is a great question. I mean, the Israelis have been saying for weeks now that they've taken out 70% of the launchers and the vast majority of their missiles, ballistic missiles. And then, of course, every day we see more of them still coming. And in smaller amounts, as you said, 1 or 2 per volley, and therefore eminently gettable with Israel's defense systems. But they don't seem to be able to stop them at all. And there's a growing sense that they're able to repair them more quickly than has been alleged. And as we know, of course, President Trump one day says one thing and one day another thing, and it's very difficult for us to know exactly. It's an enormous country, 90 million people, and the idea that somehow we are able to know exactly what's going on across the entire region and all the launchers, it seems unlikely. And this is a country that's been at war on and off, plenty, and is clearly ready to suffer while it takes down in that asymmetrical way against a bunch of a Western country that really isn't entirely sure why it's there.
And speaking of that flip-flopping, Mark, we have some sound from the president over about how the objectives of this war and what we've heard from the administration, the messaging has changed throughout the conflict. We're going to play that for you.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable.
All right, it's not regime change, but we got regime change. The new group is less radical, which I think is a source of quite vigorous debate on that. And we're also hearing this familiar 2-week time frame. We were saying earlier, it's almost like when the airlines tell you, oh, 20 more minutes, 20 more minutes. The White House just keeps saying, oh, 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. What's your take on all this and how the messaging is impacting operations and how people feel about this conflict?
Well, colleague Barack Ravid and myself in Axios, we had written about the complications of kind of understanding what the actual signal versus the noise is coming from the president, because it says lots of things. Some of them are contradictory to his opponents and his critics. And this is just sort of madness to his supporters and people in the White House. This is part of a strategic genius, keeping things ambiguous and keeping everyone off balance. But I think it helps to go back to the original February 28th announcement with the beginning of the war that Trump had made. He laid out 4 goals that the U.S. military would accomplish, which is destroying the nuclear, missile, and naval and terrorist proxy funding capabilities of Iran. He then added another one saying that he hoped essentially that the people of Iran rose up and shook off the regime. So while he didn't say we are going to do regime change, he made it clear that the United States would like the Iranian people to do that. Now, contrast that with the clip you just played, which is the president of the United States is saying that we're going to bomb them back to the Stone Age. And that's a little different from sort of suggesting that we want to help liberate the people of Iran. Originally, we want to help liberate them from oppression. And now we're possibly going to plunge them into darkness and destroy all their infrastructure and their electricity. Now, it's not that quite clear and simple, but it is heard that way. And that speech caused the markets to plunge, which is a nightmare scenario for the president. It's something he didn't want to have happen.